Welcome to Phil and Bob's Treehouse.
The Central Park trees covered in snow. Over the Hudson, the sunset glow. The smell of halal and jasmine rice creep on the corner. Don't look so nice. Now he's pooping. Why, I don't know. Life's full of mysteries. Now it's time for the show.
Hi, I'm Phil.
Hi, I'm Bob.
We live in New York City, home to the highlights, the lowlights, and everything in between. This is our take on the human carnival.
Funding for this podcast is generously provided by the Commercial Mortgage-Backed Securities Association of Greater New York, proud supporters of the largest single-asset, single-borrower securitization transaction in history, GSMS-2021-399P, more commonly known by its underlying collateral, the Nakatomi Plaza development in Midtown Manhattan. Nakatomi Plaza. No one went back to work, so we're turning this building into a movie set. All right.
That's a familiar building title.
Oh, Nakatomi Plaza.
Yes.
Yeah. If you watched Die Hard.
Yes,
I've
seen
seen it.
it.
Great movie from the 80s, I think it was.
I think.
Bruce Willis's action hit about a terrorist attack in an LA office tower.
Yeah.
And it was called Nakatomi Plaza. So the folks in Midtown Manhattan, they're turning this office building into a giant movie set because nobody's coming back to work. No one's returning to the office.
Right.
And the people that own the underlying mortgages on this single asset have decided this is the best way forward.
Right. So the owner of the building, you mean the real estate company?
Well, it's interesting. I don't want to get too technical.
Is this like a complicated banking procedure?
Yeah, essentially It is effectively owned by the people who own the debt that finance the purchase of the property.
Right. Okay.
And you believe the equity holders are wiped out. And the people who are holding the securitization certificates, this is sort of their last grasp.
Right. Yeah, I mean, either it's a genius or it's just like a major backup plan Z, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it sounds like a good idea because Midtown, especially with, I guess it's since the pandemic, right? And the non-return to work folks is full of empty office square footage, right?
And all the businesses that relied on these office workers, right? Like the lunch counters and
the strip clubs.
The halal cart.
Yeah.
If you're a loyal listener, you know that we, Phil and Bob's Treehouse, threw out this idea when we were talking about Atlantic City.
Right. I had that idea for Atlantic City because that town is on its last legs. It's been on its last legs for decades.
Yeah.
I have always thought that would be a good studio back lot for a depressing movie or a depressing scene in a movie of some kind. So, this sounds like a good idea too. Like, because there's just literally empty office buildings.
Yep. And there's so many shots that movies need, or even TV shows.
Right.
In an office building, the office lobby, or a terrorist attack on an office building. Maybe we could blow up a few floors. Who's going to care? No one's in these buildings, right? And, if you try to film in the lobby of a building like, a show like Succession.
Right.
It's popular right now.
Yeah.
They're probably filming at 5 a.m. because they need to pick a time when the building's going to be empty.
Right.
So there you have it.
Right.
Nakatomi Plaza.
Okay.
If you're a Hollywood production company or one of these streaming services,
Yeah.
come to New York. It's got like 90 floors and a roof and a lobby and a street out front. You can film there all day long. Okay.
All right, that sounds okay. All right, so we're going to talk about crime.
Let's do it.
Crime stories.
Okay.
Our personal crime victimhood stories.
Okay. Have you been watching a lot of Fox News lately?
I have been watching a lot of Fox News. I should get into that a little bit later. All right. Someday I'll get into that. But anyway.
Back to crime.
Back to crime.
Yep.
We're going to relate our personal tales of being victims, right?
In New York City.
In New York City.
This is like sort of it's a personal history of crime in New York City
right,
over the years. Yeah.
Right. So when I was a child, I was about maybe like 10. I used to go to a group after school, which was they would pick you up after school and get you put you in a van.
Wait, so you were molested?
They would take you in a van and drive you to a Reynolds Island usually. and you would go play soccer or baseball or something. This was Friday afternoons.
That is in New York City. I think if you live in Manhattan, that's probably an efficient way and a practical way for a boy, hyperactive little boy, to get his energy out in some semblance of green open space.
Right, and you can't walk anywhere if you're 8, really. And so I recall it was always Friday after school, and we had just finished up for the day, and our whole group was like ahead of me, leaving the park. Mm-hmm. So I was with this friend of mine. All the others were kind of way ahead of us, and the counselor was way ahead of us too. And we were sort of straggling along, and I had like my knapsack and my like baseball mitt, and we were just walking, sort of getting ready to like leave the park. And before you knew it, I felt like an arm around my neck. Mm-hmm. And I felt I was being strangled from behind.
Yep.
And then 3 kids, one was behind me strangling me.
Yep.
And his 2 friends were screaming, and they're screaming to take my baseball mitt and my wallet. Uh-huh. And I mean, I was like 9 or 10. So I had a bus pass. So I didn't have any money, you know?
Yeah.
And so they took their stuff and they ran. And then my friend was just kind of standing there, stunned.
Wait, they didn't touch your friend?
They didn't touch him or his stuff.
Was he like bigger? Or
no, I guess they just decided maybe it was like in the National Geographic thing.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. You were separated from the herd, and they picked the weakest one.
Well, in those things, because all the other rest of the herd was already on their way out of the park.
Yep.
And so we were the weak that like elk.
You need to stay with the herd. The protection is in the herd. Yeah.
Right. So we had no counselor / protective tiger. Not tiger, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were thinned out, and they took my shit, and then he did run. He ran up ahead to go get the counselor.
While you were being mugged.
Yes. Or maybe just after those kids ran away. They ran away.
Tell the truth now, and I promise I won't make fun of you. Did you cry?
No.
You didn't?
I didn't cry, but I remember being in a state of shock because I was on the ground. Uh-huh. I was like, I do recall the guy, it was a very forceful experience. Like he literally strangled me.
How old were these kids?
If I was 10, they were like 14 or 15.
Okay.
Right? And they strangled me from behind.
Well, strangled? Like, were you really strangled, or that's your view?
My recollection is that he was very forceful in cutting off my air supply.
Really? But you never felt at risk of like being strangled, did you?
No, he was choking me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to him, though. I mean, that's the effective strategy, right? If you go in, it's like shock and awe.
Right.
You can't fuck around.
Right.
If you're going to jack someone, you got to go in there, show them you mean business. Right. And then take their shit.
But today, I mean, I had nothing. Today, they would take my phone and all this shit.
I know, an iPhone and all that.
Yeah, so he ran up to go get the counselor, who I remember was like a big guy.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess you could call it a happy ending, because he found the counselor who had the baseball bats, and he ran all the way back into the park after those kids and went after them with a bat. And they dropped my stuff.
Wait, so how many counselors were there?
One.
So he went after them with a bat?
Yeah.
What's the point? I mean, he probably knew you didn't have much. I guess maybe the mitt might have been like...
But I guess I guess if you're the counselor and one of their kids you're in charge of is like, has been mugged...
Yeah, but the bat screams of retribution, or like was he trying to recover? That's what I'm saying, your mitt, your property.
I guess he was trying to... maybe he didn't know what they took, but I guess... He was in charge.
Or he was just thinking, there goes my tip from that fucking family.
But, so I guess the upshot of that is nothing really, except that Central Park used to be, look, you can get a lot of problems anywhere in the city and Central Park still. Yeah. But it used to be considered like...
Wait, did this mugging happen in Central Park or
Central
Randall's
Park?
Okay,
Central Park.
But you've talked about Randall's Island at the beginning, which you do almost every episode.
We would go to Randall's Island.
We talk about Randall's Island a lot.
Because we would go to Randall's Island or Central Park. But Central Park back then, and a lot of the parts of the city was more like circumscribed a little bit in terms of like there were more areas that were sort of recommended you don't go after hours, or it wasn't after hours. It was like maybe dusk. It was dusk on a Friday, which is the Sabbath.
Yeah. So that Abraham was wise. He was like, if it's dusk on Friday,
stay inside. Stay home
on the weekend.
But anyway, so Central Park was, they said don't I don't think I'd probably walk around Central Park at night.
Back then.
Even now, maybe. I don't think.
Yeah.
But back then, for sure, it would empty things. I don't know if it was they emptied out or just there was more. There was more like there's definitely crime now, but I feel like there was more a sense of like you could be a victim of like random, like just like a mugging or sort of just a street crime. The odds were higher.
For street crime back then versus now.
Back then versus now.
I don't have a personal crime experience in terms of getting mugged. And
as a youth, you mean?
As a youth.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it must have been traumatic.
This was actually the only time I got mugged. But probably 35% of the kids got mugged? Got their money. No, actually, 25% got their lunch money taken. Because we were next to, and again, the city, a lot of the parts it was on the Upper West Side, and that has since become more gentrified.
Right, but people don't know West Side Story, the gangs, the Sharks and the Jets. That was the locale for that.
And it was there was the school. There was like a kind of a rough patch, like a few blocks away, and at lunchtime in like maybe starting 7th grade. Some kids started going out for lunch. They allowed you to go out to the pizza place or whatever. And like a lot of them got mugged by the neighborhood
youth
thugs.
Yeah.
And like there was this one kid, Mark S. And like he literally they took his money every day.
So why did he keep going out?
I don't know. We kept saying at some point we're like, Mark, just stop going out.
Just eat the grilled cheese in the cafeteria, bro.
But yeah, and he would get like he would go to the candy store. They would take his shit, and it would repeat every day.
Yeah.
I guess there was that part of town was less gentrified than it is. Now it's just high rises. Everybody's been priced out.
Yeah,
and they're all living in Nakatomi Plaza.
But it seems like people are talking about the crime in New York City. It's just really just the mentally ill harassing you. I think the street mentally ill.
I feel like the visible signs of like where you feel in danger here, like in the streets of most of a lot of the city it just feels a little more random, but it could erupt into a real problem
right now.
Like it could be like a lunatic with a gun.
Right, but you think back then
it felt like
more like
garden variety,
just mugging.
But
and that you think was more back then than now.
I feel like there was more just like that was more of a sort of routine threat.
Yep.
But I'm not sure I felt like I would die.
Okay, so I think I get you now because I've been dancing around a little bit because talking about crime in New York City, it's a very delicate situation now.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? There's issues of race and class.
Yes.
And I don't want anything I say to be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
But I think I agree with you. I think maybe we've sort of coalesced around a theme or a hypothesis, which is back then, in the old days, it's a grittier city. You're more likely to get mugged, but the consequence was it was an economic crime. You weren't going to end up dead. Whereas now, there seems to be a real homeless mental illness issue.
Right.
And you could end up with a cinder block on the back of your head just walking down the street randomly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, everybody here in the city experiences on a daily basis encounters or runs into in some way like a crazy it's crazy. It's it's almost like you work in being an orderly in like Bellevue.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have a daily exposure guaranteed if you leave the house to someone unhinged, right?
Yes.
You won't necessarily get mugged but you will definitely run into it
just yesterday, and you know this already, but just yesterday, my lovely queen, my current girlfriend of 11 years.
Right. Wow.
She was in a midtown salad place where you go for lunch, during work.
Yeah.
And a mentally ill homeless person was going nuts in there. She was trying not to make eye contact.
Right.
And then the guy came up behind her and spit on her.
That's terrible.
Full on spit on her.
That's terrible. I would smack that fucking bastard. No, I'm just kidding.
He's just obviously mentally ill, and you have to. you know that it's that illness.
Well, yeah.
But he's got to get on his meds, and I don't want to hear the fucking ACLU. Seriously, I don't want to hear the fucking ACLU say, like, you can't forcefully medicate people or whatever.
Right.
You can when they're going around spitting on people and
true.
shoving people on their train tracks.
Yeah.
And, I'm a fairly liberal New York, blue state resident.
Right.
And you're losing me on this issue.
Right.
And I'm going to turn to Fox News, and before you know it, I'm going to be storming the Capitol. So keep going on, AOC and all you other people, and see what happens.
Okay.
I'm playing, because what was the first thing I said when I heard that my current girlfriend of 11 years had been spit on? I said, Phil, get my strap. All right? I was about to take my piece on the street, and I haven't touched that in years.
Maybe this is how it happens, the January 6th.
Yeah.
Like, people sit around and they just work each other up into a frenzy, and they're like, we got to go storm the Capitol.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of crime back then, and this was in the 70s.
Yeah.
The Days of the Warriors. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I've seen it. Terrible movie. Doesn't hold up at all. I saw a part of it recently. There's a scene where there's a big gang meeting.
Mm-hmm. In Coney Island.
At Coney Island.
Yeah.
And they take the subway, and they show them they're paying for the subway. They're like putting quarters in instead of jumping the turnstile. Yeah. And they're all like hardened gang members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the story I was going to relate was, we lived in Riverdale, and there was a Citibank, an old Citibank branch there.
Right.
And my mom was in there when it was armed robbed. like
Dog Day Afternoon?
It was like Dog Day Afternoon.
Like one guy or a...
I don't know the exact story, because my mom came home and told me this. It was actually the first time I actually recall her crying, like ever seeing her cry. But and she was like all shaken, and she like asked for a glass of water, and I was like just trying to comprehend. But she said that she was in the bank. Someone came in with a gun and said everybody in the floor, and was robbing the bank.
Right.
And I was probably, I don't know, like 7 or 8 maybe.
Yeah.
And a lasting memory is my mom also telling me that there was an elderly woman in there who was about to make a bank deposit, and she was shoving her cash into her bra. So that's the kind of thing that sticks with you. But stuff like that, I guess, I guess it was more prevalent back then. I don't know. I mean, people rob banks now, I guess.
Yeah, no. My high school friend was at home with his family on Monday night, and they were watching Monday Night Football, and a guy came in through the window on his out from the fire escape uptown, and tied them all up at gunpoint, and led them through the house and took a lot of stuff. And then he came to school the next day, and the teacher said, the teacher was asking for the homework, and he said he couldn't do it because he was tied up.
Did he really say that?
Yeah. He said he was. And then
wait, how old was he?
We was in high school.
I know who this is.
No, I know. We were like 16 or 17.
Oh, okay. So it was
in the late 80s.
We're offering a counterpoint, I think, to these Fox News talking heads who are like, New York is lawless and out of control. No. You know what it is there's no federal funding for mental illness anymore. Right. And all the schizophrenics, frankly, are out on the street. The people with psychosis, right? Like, you don't see people with clinical depression, right? They're not exactly out there, wielding axes.
They're not a threat.
Although, as I say that, I think the guy who crashed the Germanwings plane,
the what?
The pilot that had depression that crashed the plane on purpose in Europe.
Oh, no. He was depressed?
He was depressed, apparently.
That's not a depressed crime.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the
I think suicide is a depressed crime.
Well, he committed suicide with 100 people.
But that's
on a
like
plane.
an angry suicide.
Yeah. So that's the exception that proves the rule. Like in general, people who are depressed don't do what the schizophrenics are doing.
Right.
Just like people the guy takes a lot of weed or ecstasy.
Yeah.
He's just gonna lie there and maybe just look up at the sky smiling. It's PCP and cocaine and methamphetamine. I think that drives a lot of the more violent crime.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's just a drug crime correlation side.
Yeah,
but it's funny because I think sincerely, like the two of us, I guess these stories, there's an element of nostalgia there too, right? It was, isn't there like the city was this gritty,
right? And now it's a gentrified. It's like Times Square is like Disneyland now and stuff like that.
And this office tower and park in the
Nakatomi,
50s, it was now being rebranded as Nakatomi Plaza. Right. It's a ghost town.
Right.
It's like this Manhattan is a gentrified area that's really, really nice and less gritty than before.
Right.
70s and 80s, except there's like this wild card, which is the mentally ill homeless person who could pop out anytime.
Yeah, from around the corner.
I gotcha.
Just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger, now he's dead.
Okay, do you want to do the get rich quick scheme?
I'd love to do that.
Okay.
I think that, we've repeatedly on this podcast given out lots of free ideas to make money.
Yeah.
That's just who we are.
Yeah.
We're connectors and we are enablers.
Right.
We're like venture capitalists that don't actually invest.
Yeah.
We just we create the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in thinking about the failure of the full-time return to office that folks like Jamie Dimon and other, business leaders want to see happen.
Right.
It reminded me of back when I did work full-time in an office in Midtown, and many of my colleagues lived in the suburbs, took the train in, and some of them drove. And having grown up in this area and shuttled between, New York and Connecticut and Westchester, I think you get an appreciation for just how clogged these highways can get in and out of the city.
Right.
I mean, you don't know traffic until you've been on the Cross Bronx Expressway on a Friday afternoon in the summer.
Right.
But it got me thinking that it might make sense as a carbon-friendly alternative to driving in to the city and parking, and having to deal with traffic, is to take a boat in, a ferry.
A boat, right. Well, we're surrounded by water.
Yes, New York is an island.
I guess we should take advantage of that.
We should we should lean into the fact that Manhattan is an island. No one does.
Right.
So, there's obviously some ferries now that go between Manhattan and the sort of new development on the Jersey shoreline of the Hudson.
Yeah.
And, there's some ferries that go between the east side of Manhattan, across the East River into parts of Brooklyn.
Right.
But I think the next stage in this evolution is the commuter ferry that goes, maybe it leaves from a harbor town in southern Connecticut, Greenwich, Cascade, something like that.
Right.
Stamford, I think, is on the water as well.
Yeah.
It's a high-speed ferry that goes from there to, downtown Manhattan or midtown Manhattan. Have a parking lot out there in Stamford or wherever before the traffic builds up on the way into the city or out of the city. You hop on this nice little ferry, and then you go to your office job.
Like a white-collar ferry?
It's going to be white-collar. That's the only way that it's going to work.
Well, why? Because that's where it goes, you mean?
No, we're gonna have to charge a premium, I think, and that's frankly the people that can afford a service like this. But Jamie Dimon, Eric Adams, if you're interested in getting people back to the office, if you're interested in getting a guy from Darien, Connecticut, who just realized after the pandemic that he's been wasting 3 hours of his life every day, an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half in the evening, just wasted, just getting to work. They trying to convince him to start coming in 5 days a week. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I think.
But the boat.
Yeah. We'll call it.
Well, you can make it like a nice boat.
We'll call it the fancy boat.
The fancy boat.
Take the fancy boat in. I don't know. Is Darien on the water? It's close. It's got to be Westport's on the water, right? Yeah. So we get a nice green sort of biodiesel fueled fast ferry.
Right.
It docks in Westport. All of these white-collar guys come down to the dock, get in the fast ferry, boom, no traffic, on the water, hydrofoil into Manhattan for like 30 minutes later.
But what would you charge for this kind of thing? Like a monthly fee?
Yeah, like a monthly pass.
But very expensive.
It's got to be...
Like $500 a ride.
I don't know. Well, as I'm spitballing this, maybe... companies will subsidize this because
ads.
They realize.
Yeah.
Actually, we should stop talking about this. This one makes sense. We got to hit up, the biggest. It'd
be like City Bike. It would be called the City Boat. No one has taken advantage of the fact that we live on an island.
Yes.
And there are other ways to go besides car and train, right? Namely, boat.
Yeah, boat.
Boat.
Yeah.
So it's an idea.
I think it's a great idea, and. Actually, the more we talked about it, I think we're going to have to capitalize on this one.
Maybe like a sailboat? Or maybe you could make it a yachting experience.
No, because it's for people who are going into work every day. I think it's just got to be just like a big boat that we can cram as many people on as possible.
Okay.
It just has to be fast.
Oh, okay.
Right? It gets you from Westport to Midtown in 43 minutes without like trying to like drive like across the Bruckner and like over the Triborough, you know?
Yeah.
And then like the slow down to the Merritt. Like it's just, I mean, it saves you a lot of agita.
How long would it take to, jet skis?
Yeah.
How long would it take to jet ski from there?
I don't know.
in your suit.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be practical probably for most of the year in terms of temperature. And then it wouldn't be practical all year long in terms of being able to wear your clothes, office clothes on the jet ski.
Yeah.
And then I would imagine parking the jet ski would be an issue.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But the ferry, the fancy boat?
Right.
I think it could work.
I think it's a good idea.
I don't mean to even focus on Connecticut. I mean, it could go up into the Sound and make a right turn coming out of the city.
Well, we could have two boats.
The whole Gold Coast of Long Island.
That's true.
The North Shore.
Right. We could have two boats.
Oyster Bay.
Yeah.
Great Neck, Sands Point. I could go on. All right? Well, and also one up the Hudson River towns. The only towns we can't service are the inland Westchester towns.
Right.
But they, the
Hudson, yeah.
Yeah, but for them, I think Metro North might be the best alternative.
Yeah, and then the one on the Hudson could be more like, I'm thinking aesthetic, I guess. But it could be more like, there's like a little fake water wheel and stuff.
A schooner?
Again, has a little more
I don't think that's the value proposition
I know what you're
for
saying.
A guy that has to like come in. But
if you're going to pay a lot, if we're going to gouge people for a boat,
it's all about the convenience.
I guess you kind of want a semi-nice experience.
The head of accounts receivable at a major corporation, he's gonna be like, I'm not paying extra for the little schooner experience. We'll get that feedback right away in our feedback cards.
Right.
They just want to get from point A to point B as fast as possible without any disturbance to their precious personal schedule.
But so no, like the people who take the tickets are not also like strippers.
No, I mean, I think that that's a separate episode about suburban dads.
Okay. That's a different issue.
Soon we'll be making another run. The love boat promises something for everyone.
Well, kind of related to the topic of commuting.
Yeah.
I was thinking about road rage the other day.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in the last episode, I took a road trip with my daughter.
Yeah.
And, we were in some suburban and then very rural.
Yeah.
Rural.
Yeah.
That's a funny word.
Yeah.
Rural environments.
Right.
And, it seemed like the road rage out there was just a little angrier and felt like there was a potential for violence out there, which surprisingly, I don't think exists in New York. I think that in New York, there's a lot of honking and yelling and fuck you and this and that, but it's just competitive.
Right.
It's not violent or angry.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes, do you feel like you were in a part of the country where the people, they might have been armed or something?
Yeah,
it sounds like you thought you were you were surrounded by rednecks.
Yeah, that's the thing, the pickup trucks with the gun racks.
Because I think that sometimes when you leave the city and you go to like a place it feels like Trumpy Fox country.
Yeah.
And like there could be guns and they people there maybe don't trust you because you may not look like them.
Yes.
And also a lot of people like that, their day-to-day life is not necessarily involved like a lot of like interpersonal contact.
Right.
Like if you get on the subway or something here, it seems like regular interaction in that sense, like physical interaction is more of your daily life. And so if something goes wrong, like you knock into someone by accident or whatever, it just kind of, that's like, those are the rules of the game here. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I get mad walking and people are walking poorly and not following the unspoken rules of the street. Mm-hmm. But like in general, if you're in sort of that kind of Trump land, it feels like the stakes are higher somehow because it's not as constant.
That's very insightful.
Thank you.
No, I'm being serious. Yeah, I think, we live in a city and that environment, I think you have to learn to be in a community and to know that there's the accidental bumps and nudges are going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to happen a lot more often when you're in an urban environment versus a very sparsely populated rural environment, right? And where people are used to being by themselves or having more space,
right?
You know, and I think they react maybe more violently to invasions of their perceived space,
right?
You know?
Right? Yeah, I feel like they're like, this is my territory.
Yeah,
like you can't play that here. There's we have no space. There's no territory.
And that is what the Republican Party with this whole stand your ground and all this shit. It's because the idea of like my personal property and my rights and my guns, right? I mean, that is easier or less dangerous to society as a whole when everybody lives further apart.
Right, I agree.
But if everybody's allowed to shoot everybody else, like at the slightest provocation, and everybody could have a gun, right? So Second Amendment, and then, stand your ground. Then in New York City, I think it would be the Wild West on steroids.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to hang like a huge Trump flag or something or a Confederate flag out their window in New York City because it's just too offensive, right?
Yeah.
But like some guy who has a house in the middle of nowhere is going to put up a 100-foot tall flagpole with Trump on it because who cares?
Yeah.
You know, and no one bothers you and do whatever you want.
Exactly.
But that's a deeper issue.
It is a deeper issue.
But these are, sometimes you can't do whatever you want.
It's easy to stress the importance or the primacy of like personal liberty over the good of society when folks live like there's one person per square mile. It's like I have all the guns you want, get fireworks, guns, and whatever, fucking Oxycontin or whatever they do out there. Yeah, I'm being not classist. I'm being
I don't know
a geographicist.
Geographicist.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about driving here too is almost like assume that there are no rules. It's like you can't even really read the lanes here because their paint is so bad. The dotted lines and stuff. It's like half the streets are like it's just a black street you just drive on with no lanes, and so you have to deal with it and accommodate each other somehow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know people scream at each other all the time, but it's more like the screaming in like Midnight Cowboy, What, those movies were just like, get out of my that. It's not buddy. Like, hey, buddy,
or like a 1950s. Hey, get you palooka or whatever they called each other.
Right. It never feels like there's like behind that is like some lunatic.
I know.
Some
It's true. Fox News has turned the narrative around, right? New York is just a friendly place.
Right.
We give each other grief.
Right.
But we're not going to shoot you if you ring our doorbell. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like the DoorDash guy comes to your door, and you're like, I didn't order this. It's like it's for downstairs. You do that in Kansas City, you'll end up dead. You know what I'm saying? So
watch, I'm probably going to get assaulted later. I'm jinxing this.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, Phil.
All right, bye.
All right, see ya.
See ya.
Well, that's the show, folks. Our theme song was performed by Echo Strata. He's an incredible Brooklyn-based artist creating psychedelic alternative music. Check him out on Spotify, Apple Music, and iTunes.
Central Park trees covered in snow. Over the Hudson, the sunset glow. The smell of halal and jasmine rice creep on the corner. Don't look so nice. Now he's pooping. Why, I don't know. Life's full of mysteries. Now it's time for the show.
That was fucking awesome!
That was awesome.
Yes!